What worries me about where we've got to is trade wars are easy to start, really hard to stop, because you go from trade to politics real quick. And that's where we've got to with this one. And so from the Chinese perspective, the politics of backing down are almost impossible to swallow, even within an authoritarian political system. And so what I worry about is where this now translates to. So for Xi Jinping domestically to turn around to the colleagues in the Standing Committee of the Politburo and saying, we got it wrong all the time. Those Americans have been right from the get-go. We've now got to accept the Trump formula. It's bad internal politics for him. And the final point is this, the kind of pro-free trade, pro-market economy types within the Chinese leadership, led by Vice Premier Liu He, who's been the intermediary backwards and forwards to Washington in the last couple of months, he gets, I won't say disgraced, but he loses face within the internal system of Chinese politics. His voice and its importance of his voice is therefore reduced in the future. So if you're asking me from just the internal Chinese read of this, I think we see now a hardening of the position and a reassertion of the authority of the hardliners.
But no one thinks it's going to last forever, though. So in a lot of these things, eventually they find a way for both sides to save face somehow. And maybe if you look into the gritty details, one side actually comes out with on the losing end. But I figure there's some way, unless we're going to be here 5 years from now talking about this, there's got to be some way where it is somehow resolved with both.
Well, that's the question which I speak to the Chinese about, which is, what the hell is the end game? And so their assumption, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm not saying they in the sense I know what Xi Jinping's thinking, not that grand, but their conclusion internally is that this is going to ride through until the midterms in this country, because it's so much part and parcel of President Trump's election strategy for the Congress, for the House, the Senate. You watch his speech in Montana the other night. It's very much part and parcel of the campaign. So
and then what
6 months.
What do they think's going to happen? What do they think's going to happen at the midterm?
Well, unlike the Russians, they don't have that level of surveillance. But no, but the point is, if 6 months, a whole lot can happen in terms of escalation. On the de-escalation and where the deal ultimately lies, you know, I don't pick up a ready formula from either the Chinese or from intermediaries as to where the landing point is. From their perspective, when they sent Liu He to Washington with a list of $75 billion worth of concessions about 6 weeks ago, they thought that was about it. But now that's been rejected, and now we have the formal declaration today. Well, their system is tit for tat.
Right, but what about the intellectual property and the way that you need to do business in China? Do they have no idea that that's not the way it's really done, and that they're...
Or do they not care?
Well, they know deep down that they steal intellectual property. They know deep down that they do some of these things, don't they? Or they don't?
Let me answer both on trade and IP, intellectual property. On trade, if you go to the Chinese and have a heart-to-heart conversation about the size of the imbalance with the United States approaching half a trillion.
Right.
The Chinese will say to you, yeah, we get that. Okay. We've actually got to do something about it. So when I've been speaking to folks in Beijing, they say, okay, let's find a way of managing this imbalance.
And when they say they have to
down.
do something about it, they have to do something, what do they think that...
Administratively, that is, to ensure that they lift imports of US goods.
Okay, so they know that part. But
on the other side, IP.
IP, are they deniers? And I know you like that term because you use it. Are they deniers?
No, just because you're a climate change guy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's an entirely different story.
We'll
have a debate on that
It's
soon.
a terrible word to use in any context other than the way it should be. But anyway, do they deny that there's a problem with the way they approach IP?
You know the way in which they approach IP? They approach IP as legitimate theft from the West, given what the West has done to China for a couple of 100 years.
Which is what?
No, it's a whole historical thing. I'm not justifying this, you asked me to explain.
Yeah, but
the historical thing is, go back to the Opium Wars, Western exploitation of China, you moved in, forced them to have all that opium.
That's bizarre. So they think that these things they do now are justified as
I'm explaining to you, it's an historically informed mindset, whereby they see these sorts of practices as maybe not desirable, but ultimate payback for a whole series of things which the US and the West have done to the Chinese. You know what's going to work against it, though? They're going to have their own domestic IP industry emerging.
Right.
A lot of innovation within China. So there's a lobby emerging from their own firms about how do we protect our own IP
Right.
in international markets. That's
Because
the
our
one.
behavior has given others.
Yeah, that's the one
complete
saving grace that
legitimacy.
it's emerging. But they regard everything else as fair game. And is it right? No. Is that the way they see it? That's exactly the way they see it.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.